What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I want to rank all 22 Miami Dolphins starters from 1 to 22. So the reason I'm doing this video is actually because of Kyle Krabs and his Locked on Dolphins podcast. Please go check it out. I will have it linked in the description because that is where this idea came from. And basically what he said and what he did is he ranked all 22 starters on the Miami Dolphins. And I will go through all the starters right now, and then I'll get into his list, and then I'll give you my list. I'm very excited to go through this process, what Kyle Krabs had, what I had, how we compare, how we're similar, how we're different. And in the end, I think it's just a very, very interesting exercise to do with this Miami Dolphins team. And it kind of gives an overall reflection of how good this team really is, which is why I'm so excited to go into this and break this down. So with that being said, let's rank all of the Miami Dolphins starters from 1 to 22. So before we actually get into the list, what I want to do is actually give you guys who is the projected starters. Obviously, we are going with a 3-by-1 offense, 3 wide receivers, 1 running back. Obviously, you have a tight end in there as well. And on defense, we obviously run a nickel-based front with that 4 down lineman, 2 linebacker, and 5 defensive back base. So those are the positions we're going with. And I'll just give you a list of all the projected starters because me and Kyle Krabs did actually agree on who the starters would be, so there were no issues here. Starting on the offense, obviously we have tagovailoa going to the running back position. I believe it's going to be Chase Edmonds. Then you have Mike Gesicki at the tight end position. And then the 3 wide receivers are Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Cedric Wilson, with the offensive line being Terron Armstead, Liam Eichenberg, Connor Williams at center, and Liam Eichenberg at guard, Robert Hunt, and Austin Jackson at right tackle. That's how I project the starters to be, and that's how we're going to rank those offensive players. So heading on to the defense, we have Emmanuel Ogbah, we have Christian Wilkinson, we do have Zach Sealer because you are going with their nickel-based front. So Raekwon Davis won't find himself in as a starter, but we obviously know he does play on those run downs. But for now, it is going to actually be Sealer in as the second defensive lineman, as well as Jalen Phillips. So Emmanuel Ogbah, Jalen Phillips, Christian Wilkins, and Zach Sealer will be those players for the projected starters. Then obviously we have Jerome Baker and Landon Roberts at the inside linebacker position. I do think there's a chance Channing Tindall can't take that spot, but at the start of the season, I don't think he will have taken over that spot just yet. It might be in the middle of the season or at the start of next season, so for now it is Landon Roberts. And obviously we have our 5 defensive backs with Xavien Howard and Byron Jones at the outside corner spot, Nick Needham playing in the slot, and then Javon Holland and Brandon Jones as the safeties. So those are all of the 22 projected starters. And first we'll go through Kyle Krabs' list, and then I will give you mine. So Kyle Krabs has it listed as follows, and he does have it divided into tiers, which I will give you, but please do go check out his whole podcast. It's a 30-minute episode, and if you want daily Miami Dolphins content, it's a great channel to follow, which again I will have in the description, the video and the channel. Well, obviously the channel will be following the video, but it's something that you should definitely go and check out. But Kyle Krabs' list is as follows, and these are his blue chip franchise cornerstones players. He has Xavien Howard at 1, Tyreek Hill at 2, Terron Armstead at 3, Javon Holland at 4, Christian Wilkins at 5, Emmanuel Ogbah at 6, and Jalen Waddle at 7. And that rounds out his cornerstone kind of franchise pieces for this Miami Dolphins team. The next tier he has is quality starters, and in that he has 8 Jerome Baker, 9 Zach Sealer, 10 Byron Jones, 11 Mike Gesicki, 12 Connor Williams, 13 Robert Hunt, and 14 Jalen Phillips. Then we get into the adequate starters as he lists it. Chase Edmonds, Tua Tagovailoa, Nick Needham, Cedric Wilson, and Brandon Jones at 15 through 19 respectively. And then for 20 through 22, it's Liam Eichenberg at 20, Landon Roberts at 21, and Austin Jackson at 22. Now with his list, there's a couple of things I think Jerome Baker's a little high, and I do think that there are a couple of things I will switch around, which we'll get to. But overall, it's a very, very good list, and to be honest, it's not that different than mine, to be honest. I think we agree on a lot of things, me and Kyle Krabs, which is obviously why I relate to him, and I think obviously he's a great scout and a great person to follow for football. But with that all being said, I think our lists are very similar, but I do have a couple changes, and there's a couple big changes in there, but overall it's a very similar sort of list. But I do agree with most of what he says here. But the thing that you notice when you rank all these starters, when you have a guy, at least for Kyle Krabs, at 14 and Jalen Phillips, like if Jalen Phillips is your 14th best player and he just put up 8.5 sacks as a rookie, that really says a lot about the quality of your NFL team, right? So it's showing us that we do have one of the best teams we've had in years. Again, when you have Jalen Phillips as your 14th best player, that's pretty incredible. So getting into my list, I'm actually going to go from 22 to 1 in the episode that Kyle Krabs did. He actually went from 1 to 22, but I do actually want to go from 22 to 1. I am going to start off with my 22nd player, which is Liam Eichenberg. He really struggled as a rookie, and he does have a little bit more promise in terms of he was only under that poor offensive scheme and poor offensive coaching for 1 year. Unlike Austin Jackson, who was under that for 2 years, but he does rank last for me heading into the season just because he had a very, very poor rookie year and was probably the worst tackle in football, maybe if not for Jesse Davis. At number 21, I have Landon Roberts, who really should be your third inside linebacker just because he's a guy who fills a role in terms of being a good run stopper and a hard hitter, but he does tend to miss those wrap-up tackles, and he is just kind of a replacement level player in terms of being a inside linebacker. Again, solid depth to have on the team, but you probably don't want him starting at this point in his career. And then at 20, which does round up our developmental type and replacement level players, I do have Austin Jackson. He is at 20, so just 2 spots ahead of Liam Eichenberg, but I do have a little bit more faith in him actually over Liam Eichenberg, which is where me and Kyle Krabs actually do disagree, just because I feel like Austin Jackson's body type and athleticism actually fits really well into what Mike McDaniel likes to do with his offensive linemen. So obviously his technique isn't there, but hopefully with some improved coaching with guys like himself and Mike McDaniel, as well as a guy like Frank Smith and obviously Matt Applebaum as our offensive line coach. I just feel like with improved coaching, Austin Jackson does actually have a chance to become a usable NFL player and a usable NFL tackle. Again, this is really projecting and hoping that he develops, and I do have a little bit more faith in him than Liam Eichenberg just because of the kind of scheme fit, but they are just both in my developmental tier just because none of them have proven anything yet. So we definitely need to see more out of our first and second round offensive lineman selections in these past few years. Getting into the adequate starters list at 19, I have Nick Needham. I think he's improved over the years, and I think he's better than what people give him credit for in some ways, but I think a lot of people also overrate him as well. He does rank at number 19, which even seems low for a guy like him because I do think he's pretty solid. To me, he just gets burnt a little bit. He's a little slow, but he is still a very solid slot corner. I wouldn't call him the best of the best, but I wouldn't call him absolute trash either. I think he's probably just below average or average. So again, that's why he is in this adequate starters tier and a little bit below in that tier. So I think that's where he slots in, but not to worry there. At number 18, I have Cedric Wilson, just because I don't know if he'll get the amount of touches that he needs to be in that quality starters or blue chip cornerstones type place, just because, again, he has so many guys in front of him. He'll probably be the 5th or 6th receiving option with the running backs, Gesicki, the receivers. So that's why I have him this low. He obviously does produce when he gets opportunity. So again, this isn't trying to shit on Cedric Wilson or anything. It's just based on what the offensive production projects to be, especially as that third receiver. But he should still do well. We paid him $7.5 million. We do need to get him the ball, so it's something to keep in mind. But he does rank at number 18, and again, that should say a lot about the quality of this team when a guy like Cedric Wilson does rank at number 18. Who's a very, very solid, might be one of the best third wide receivers in the entire NFL. Moving on to number 17, that is where I have Chase Edmonds coming in. I think he's been a great secondary back in Arizona with a guy like James Conner, and he's never actually had the chance to start and be that number one starter. And obviously this will still be a committee. I talked about that in my last video, which you can see above me and in the card above me. But I talked about it in that video. I do think he will have the chance to lead this committee and be the number one back in a committee. So I think that's a very interesting spot for him. I think if you give him a couple more opportunities and a couple more touches, he can be a little bit better, but still is definitely still an adequate starter. Not a quality starter just yet, just because we have to see it on the field, but he's definitely an adequate starter and probably an above average starter, hopefully under this run offense. But I definitely do like Chase Edmonds and what he projects to do and what he can do, especially if he develops a little bit more into something more than just an elite complementary back. But I'm going to say it every time, a guy like Chase Edmonds being at 17 just speaks to the quality of this team. At number 16, I have Brandon Jones, who I think is a little bit underrated by Miami Dolphins fans. And I do think if he gets a little bit better in coverage over this offseason, he might be underrated a lot by Miami Dolphins fans heading into this season. He's amazing as an inside-the-box type safety and is a great tackler, a great guy in space. The issue is obviously in that coverage game. But I think he was awesome. He led the league in sacks for a defensive back last year. That's something that is hard to do as a smaller guy going up against those big offensive linemen. Obviously, you're going on moves and blitzes, but still, it's very impressive for a defensive back and to be the leader in defensive back sacks. But I just think he's awesome as that inside-the-box type safety. He's an awesome tackler. If he can just improve in coverage, he'll be great. So that's why I have him ranked at number 16. And now we get to a big one at number 15. This is where I have Tua Tagovailoa, not in that quality starter just yet, even though I think he can be with this new opportunity. But unfortunately for now, especially with what he's been dealt, he has just been an adequate starter. And to be fair, like I've said many times, I think being an adequate starter with what he's dealt with is very impressive, to be in this adequate starter list and to be at the top, because this is the end of the adequate starter kind of tier. So I think it's really impressive that Tua Tagovailoa is at the top of this tier as an adequate starter, as an average starter, but at the top of that tier for the Miami Dolphins. So he slots in at number 15. Now we move on to the quality starters tier. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa barely misses out on this tier, but again, I think he can easily move into this or a blue chip cornerstone if he balls out this year. He can easily move up all the way from an adequate starter, skip quality starter, move right up to a blue chip cornerstone type franchise player. So I definitely think the sky is the limit for Tua Tagovailoa heading into this year, but he definitely has to perform. If he doesn't, this might be the last year with him on the team. But again, like I said, moving on to the quality starters tier, I have Jerome Baker starting at number 14, which is a big drop off with Kyle Krabs as he drops off 6 spots. Kyle Krabs did have the notion that it was the second half of the season when he's playing that weak side linebacker role instead of that inside linebacker role, having the ability to blitz off the edge and use his speed and use his ability to play in space as a better player, just because he is a better player on that outside type role instead of inside, even though he can play both pretty well. But to me, it's just that he struggles to get off blocks when he does get aligned with an offensive lineman. He does struggle to get off blocks and make those tackles. So that's why I have him lower at number 14, but still a quality starter as an inside and outside. Just an overall pretty good linebacker. But again, just for me, the ability to get off blocks is an issue. So I have him at number 14. At number 13, I have Zach Steeler. And the only reason he's this low is because he doesn't play enough snaps. He's amazing when he has the chance to play, but I need to see it with more snaps because obviously nothing is linear. So it's not like, oh, if you give him more snaps, he's just going to continue to play awesome. Maybe part of him playing awesome is staying fresh and only playing that limited amount of snaps. So if he had more snaps, he'd probably be higher on the list. But for now, this is where I'm going to have Zach Steeler. Next up is actually I'm going to list 2 players. At 12, I have Robert Hunt, and 11, I have Connor Williams. I think they're very, very similar in terms of skill set, but I do think Connor Williams is a little bit more well-known around the league and just a little bit better in terms of what we've seen with him on the Cowboys. So I do have Connor Williams just barely ahead of Robert Hunt, but I think they're very, very similar in terms of their skill and talent level. And that's where I have them slotting in at 11 and 12 for those 2 players. Robert Hunt, honestly, he has the ability. He's easily the best offensive lineman coming back to this team, to be on the team from a previous year on this Dolphins roster. But I definitely think he is continuing to make strides as the best offensive lineman before we've added guys like Connor Williams and Terron Armstead, who we'll get to. But those 2 players do slot in at 12 and 11. Connor Williams is an awesome blocker, especially in the run game. He did have a few penalties, but like I've talked about before when I was talking about in the Tua Tagovailoa video, he actually doesn't get that many penalties overall in his career. Like before this last year, he was actually like very low in penalties. So if he can just regress to the mean and regress to what he usually does in penalties and continues to produce like he did last year without the penalties, we might have a Pro Bowler on our hands in the left guard or center now for Connor Williams. So that's why I have him at 11. And then just ahead of him, I have Jalen Phillips just because I project big things for him. I think he gets up into that double-digit sack range. And to be honest, the number 10 is a perfect spot for me for him. He was awesome last year, putting up 8.5 sacks, and he could have had more. He whiffed on a couple, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's why he was a rookie. So hopefully he develops and he can get those sacks this year, plus a few more. Probably hoping for him to get a few more pressures as well, as he did struggle with that a little bit. But again, he only played like 50% of the snaps too, so that's really tough to deal with. You want to be in the game a lot. So hopefully he can improve as a run stopper and a run defender. And if he can just up those pressures and up that snap percentage that he receives, he should be in for a big year. So that's why I have him at number 10. And then right next up, I have Byron Jones at number 9. When you have a guy like Byron Jones at number 9, again, it shows how good your team really is. But he does struggle a little bit. He gets burnt by guys like Christian Kirk. I still remember that Cardinals game 2 years ago now. I do think he gets burnt a little bit too much, but then I think like the quality of him as a player, other than those few games where he does get burnt a little bit, he's an awesome corner and he allows Xavien Howard to do what he does. Again, another player who we'll get to later in the video. But Byron Jones has become a little underrated for Dolphins fans. I think a lot of people we plan to get rid of him, and honestly, it's not the worst decision just because of salary and stuff. But the thing with Byron Jones is he's so good in man coverage. And I think he allows Xavien Howard to do what he does. He allows this scheme and this defensive scheme to be what it is. So I think he goes underrated just in terms of he's not a guy who produces ball production. He's not a guy who's going to get interceptions. He's not a guy who's going to do any of that. So I think that's why he does get a bad rep. But that is why I have him at number 9 and not any higher, just because of that lack of ball production. And he does get burnt that little bit. But even without that ball production, I do have him coming in at number 9. At number 8, we do get to Mike Gesicki. I do think that his production will actually decrease from last year just because we should see a significant decrease in targets with the additions of Tyreek Hill and Cedric Wilson and even a guy like Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. I apologize for the background noise. Hopefully you guys cannot hear that. There's construction going on outside, but there's nothing I can control to do with that. But Mike Gesicki does come in at number 8. He doesn't really block that much. Hopefully that is what they're trying to improve. There's some reports of him watching George Kittle tape from the 49ers, which obviously is what you want him to do and want him to try and become. But he is more of a receiving guy with a big catch radius. So he is still slotting at number 8, which is still pretty solid. He just isn't higher because his production should go down a little bit with that reduction in targets. So it's just one of those things where you have a guy like Tyreek Hill added to the team, so you can expect Mike Gesicki to drop off a little bit. But hopefully what happens with Mike Gesicki is when his yards and targets regress, because they probably will with the addition of Tyreek Hill, you hope his scoring goes back to what he usually is. As a big body catch radius guy, he should be a great red zone threat. He only put up 2 touchdowns this past year, which is definitely not good enough. You need Mike Gesicki to put up 5 touchdowns, something around there. So maybe he will put up a few less yards than that 700-plus yard season that he just had. But as long as he let's say he only puts up like around 600 yards, hopefully with that he does put up a little bit more touchdowns and just increases his scoring ability. And that does bring us to the end of our quality starters list. And then we get to the blue chip cornerstones list, which means we have 7. That means we have 7 players who me and Kyle Krabs, we both agree, we have 7 blue chip cornerstone franchise players, which is a lot. And that just shows, again, how good our team is. At number 7, I have Christian Wilkins. He could probably be a little bit higher, but I just need to see an increase in his sack production. But he's a dominant run stopper, one of the most underrated players in the league. I think he was the second best interior run stopper in the entire NFL. So he is definitely underrated. And honestly, I could have him higher in this list. I could easily see him going up to almost as high as 4. I could see him going up to 4. Maybe it changes depending on the day. I might disagree with stuff I even say in this video if you ask me on a different day, but I do have Christian Wilkins at 7 for now. Hopefully he can develop that pass production against the pass and get some sacks and pressures, but as a run stopper and an interior run stopper, he is incredible. And up next, I do have a guy who does put up some sack production in Emmanuel Ogbah. 18 sacks over the last 2 years for the Miami Dolphins. Emmanuel Ogbah has been incredible. You would think he'd be a little bit higher, but that's just the quality of this team at number 6. That's why I have Emmanuel Ogbah there. But he is just incredible. He gets up and swats balls. He's an amazing run defender, and he's put up great sack production. And I see that maybe going up with guys like Melvin Ingram and Jalen Phillips on the team. Hopefully adding to that sack production should bring a little bit of the heat off of Emmanuel Ogbah to perform. And he could even have a double-digit year himself. So a good extension for him. I'm glad we brought him back. He's so integral to this team, especially again swatting those balls, getting that pressure, getting those sacks. So that's why I have Emmanuel Ogbah all the way at 6. At number 5, I have Jalen Waddle, just because he was in our entire offense last year. He broke the rookie receptions record, and he's just been an awesome player. He's electric when you get the ball in his hands. He's super quick, and I'm just very excited to see what he can do with some other pieces around him where teams can't just scheme exactly for him. So that's why I have him at number 5. And at number 4, Javon Holland. Man, that second half of last year, he was so good in that second half of the last year, because if you don't remember, it was actually McCourty starting for the first 2 games, and then Javon Holland took over. And then once that second half of the season, even a little bit before the second half of the season, man, he took off and was performing like a top 10 safety easily, maybe even top 5. But Javon Holland was just incredible. He's always around the ball, whether it's interceptions or getting sacks or hitting the ball hard. He's just all over the place. He's incredible. He has great range as a free safety all the way back there. Just again, such a great over-the-top defender, and he's playing so good that in that second half of the season, he was good enough to be at the number 4 spot. And I think me and Kyle Krabs agree on that. Number 3, I do have Terron Armstead. When he's healthy, he's just incredible. Top 3 left tackle in football. He's an amazing scheme fit with this Mike McDaniel outside zone, wide zone scheme. So I have Terron Armstead at 3. Not much to say here. He's just incredible. Not much to say with these higher guys. Again, me and Kyle Krabs do agree there. And we might not agree on these certain spots for them in these ranges or in these tiers. But the thing is, we pretty much agree. And I only have people like 1 or 2 spots different than what he has, other than a guy like Jerome Baker or Mike Gesicki. So again, we really agree on guys. It's just that they might be 1 or 2 spots different other than Jerome Baker, maybe a guy like Brandon Jones. But with that being said, at number 2, I do have Xavien. Now, honestly, as I'm recording this, as I'm saying this right now, I kind of feel like I want to have him at number 1 just because he does so much for this defense. He is what allows this defense to exist on this team. His ball production, his man-on-man ability, his press man ability to just be on an island and shut down your opposing team's wide receiver 1. He's just an incredible cornerback that I don't need to delve into, but he's just incredible. And honestly, right now, I feel like I can move him to number 1. So 1 and 2 is almost a tie. It's a 1A, 1B type thing. And then obviously the number 1 player on the list technically is Tyreek Hill. He's just incredible. He's so quick, so fast. He should be Austin like McDaniel. We're going to get him the ball in his hands no matter what, even if it's on end around, screen passes, down the field, in the intermediate stuff. I think Tyreek Hill should be in the line for another huge season as he is just continuing to be incredible, and he's obviously a Pro Bowl receiver, so you love to see that from Tyreek Hill. So yeah, that is my list. How do you think it compares to Kyle Crabb's list? I personally think that's very similar, but basically this list just goes to show that when a guy like Brandon Jones is at 16 or a guy like Byron Jones is at 9, it shows how good your team really is when you have those such good players down the list. But that is my list for now. So with that being said, please give me your list in the comments down below. Just let me know what your list would be for ranking your Dolphins starters from 1 to 22 in the comments down below, or hit me up on Twitter at 416J. But with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.